All right, we're welcome, everyone. We're here. I can figure out all the buttons. So glad that you're joining us. So we are doing Math Crush Monday tonight for our live. And if you notice, I'm not alone. I have Missy Spurley with me. Did I say that right? I've always said
Yep.
it. Okay, Spurley from Wisconsin. And I'm going to let her introduce herself, tell you a little bit more about her. But we thought it would be really great to have a conversation around pacing in fifth grade because this topic comes up a lot around the order of units, and specifically in fifth grade. It comes up in all the grades, but it really comes up in fifth grade a lot because there is so much content to get to prior to state testing, and there's just some challenges there. So Missy and I want to talk about what the challenges are, some of recommendations I've made for a few years. I've never actually had anyone do. And it was actually, I think Missy might even been your idea of how you broke it up. But either way, when we heard about it, I was like, oh my gosh, I've been recommending this and I've never actually talked to anyone who's done it. So we're gonna just chat through all that. If you have questions, I'm monitoring the comment box as well. We would love for you to ask your questions. And then if there's anything that comes up after our live, I will also make sure that those get over to Missy and we'll comment with some follow up. So Missy, help us out. Just tell us a little bit more about you, your teaching history, all of that jazz, and then we'll get started.
Thank you. I live in Lancaster, Wisconsin. I grew up in Racine, Wisconsin, which is a little bit south of Milwaukee. I just finished up my 28th year of teaching.
Oh my
Today is my
gosh.
first day of summer break.
Yeah,
Um,
28 years. You don't look old enough to be teaching for 28 years.
yeah, I just finished my
Wow.
20, and I've taught the grade range from second grade all the way to fifth, but more recently in the last 5 years, my principal asked me to take on, we departmentalize now second grade through fifth grade. We've departmentalized. And so he asked me to be the fifth grade math teacher and then the K-5 math leader at our school. So I kind of mentor and just do some professional development with our teachers at our school.
Yeah, awesome. And Missy's been a presenter. You might recognize her at our summit. So we've had 3 summits, and Missy's been a presenter at all 3 of them, very popular sessions, I might add. And so she's always willing to share. You're also one of the finalists for Teacher of the Year, right? In Wisconsin?
I guess it's the presidential, there's an acronym, PAEMST,
Oh my gosh, so awesome though.
something like that. So there's 3 finalists from the state for math, and I don't know when I'll find out. They just named the 2021 ones this year.
Oh, I thought so they haven't named it yet. So you're still
No,
waiting for all the decision
still
making.
waiting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it could be a year, it could be 2 years. I mean, I
Oh
guess
my
they've made the decision, but now it's up to Washington D.C., the government, basically.
gosh.
Like they have to, it has to
Because
be
then you'll
important
get
enough.
to go to DC, right? If you
Yeah,
accept the
yep,
award. Yeah, that's
yep.
so cool. So, so cool. Well, so regardless, you can tell that she's a rock star and that we're super excited to chat with her. And she's a great resource. So if you, I know she's willing to talk to anyone anytime, but their school in Lancaster you're just on WPR, right?
Yeah,
Wisconsin Public Radio.
yeah.
Just did an entire news story on the school because they have tremendous results. They've really done some great work with math expressions, with other resources that they put in, with they've got win time, your master schedule. You guys are just doing it right. You've got so many great pieces in place. And so anything you want to add about that? I mean, they're just such a good article and then honoring all the work you guys have done.
I just think it comes down to having administration that trusts and support their teachers and then giving us what we need to be successful. And honestly, a lot of it started with connecting with you. I mean, you did a lot of work with our school, adopted using the Math Genius Squad to supplement what we're doing. We're still using math expressions. I
Yeah.
mean, people want to ask us that listen to the WPR, like, what resource are you using? What program are you using? And it's like we've used the same program all the way through. Like even when our
Yes.
scores weren't great, we just
Yes.
weren't using it the way
Always
we
said
needed
that
to.
because
So
I had just had a conversation with someone else about this, and I'm like, it's not the resource. Like you can teach a really good resource poorly, and you can teach a really poor subpar resource really well. Like
yeah,
it's really what you do with the resource, and are you using the most important parts, and then are you building up good instructional leaders? Because
yeah,
it's the instructional practices that you guys put into place, like, and of course, everything that your administrator has done to support you, like you said, but you got the good training, you invested in, just good practices, and then you really stayed committed. I'm just really impressed with you guys. You've done a lot of good.
thanks. I'm pretty proud of our math team too.
Yeah, you should be. Okay, so on to our conversation for tonight. So let's talk a little bit about fifth grade, generally pacing. The issue is that you guys start with fractions, which every fifth grade teacher I've ever met has a problem with. And I'm just going to give a little background that the reason that math expressions starts with fractions is because all the grade levels, the units, go in order of priority standards. So the most important units come first because it takes you an entire year to master it. So even though fraction work, you do unit one and then you do some decimal work and then you go back to fractions, we keep coming back to fractions, but we know that like the whole year is really based upon them.
Yep.
But the problem, and you can speak to this too, is that fifth graders like deer in a headlight when they walk in to fractions. So a lot of people want to switch and they want to go to like unit two. They want to do place value first, which I've never been a huge proponent of because I feel like you need fractions to do decimals. But I think maybe it's because it just feels easier than starting with fractions. So let's first start with what were your hardships around the way the pacing was currently or is currently developed?
I just, had a lot of conversations with the fourth grade teacher and the third grade teacher of, what do you cover with fractions? Because my kids are not ready to do everything that's expected of them when they come to fifth. And so when I was realizing what a huge jump it is from fourth grade to fifth grade with the understanding of fractions, it was frustrating for me because our kids did okay. Like we're doing well, but there were so many kids whose just math mindset and just their math identity suffered. Kids, especially our kids that struggle, they're starting out behind the eight ball. They continue to be behind the eight ball. And if you don't have the concepts from unit one mastered, the rest of the year is hard. And it was I was seeing a lot of tears. I was seeing a lot of having to go back over and over. Like we're in February and I still have kids that are struggling with adding fractions. And it just was like this never ending hole that I felt like we were constantly trying to swim out of. And our kids, like I said, our kids in the end did fine. But I just felt like it was way more of a battle than it really even needed to be, I guess.
Well, and you said before that when you first even transitioned to fifth grade, scores weren't doing necessarily that great, right? So there you had probably a lot more kids struggling. And at the time, I remember you guys really transitioning even to concept-based teaching. Like you were trying to get away from these tricks and stuff, which I can imagine you were doing more trick algorithm-based teaching because it felt like it was deer in the headlights. Like they weren't really ready for it. And so all the conceptual understanding took longer even than that. Did that play into it? Because even now, like you switched it for this year, but even like, let's say last year, you were more focused on concept, but it was still like, it was just still a lot.
Yeah, and when I first started fifth grade, I started right with the modeling. Like the tricks and all those kind of things, those were the things that I used when I first started teaching fourth grade several years ago. Like some of the things to compare fractions. Like
and kids were coming up to you in fifth grade with those.
Yes, yes. Okay. And I think maybe the teacher prior to me, maybe there was more of that teaching the way they were learned, the way they were taught. And just utilizing maybe more tricks and procedures versus a lot of conceptual understanding.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So what did you decide to do? What's your big...
So I was trying to figure out a way to make it not so frustrating for my kids. I believe in grit and perseverance and problem solving, but I also want my kids to build a positive math identity and gain a little bit of confidence first, because once you have confidence, there's so many things that they can do. It opens up so many doors. So I started looking at the units and how they were put together. And I thought the only possible units that I could go out of order would maybe be unit 7 and 8. Because 7 was coordinate grids, patterns,
Expressions,
the line plots, all that kind of stuff. Not line plots, patterns, coordinate grids, and
expressions, like order of operation type.
Yes, order of operations. That's what I was looking for. And then Unit 8 was geometry, and then volume was new. And I was like, oh, kids love geometry. They love hands-on. They love, shape. Shapes seem to be something that's that universal language that they have so much background knowledge of. And I started looking through and I thought, you know what? If I started with geometry, they're still going to get the newness of volume, which is going to be exciting. I can take the fractional units out of area and perimeter, when we're doing area and perimeter review, and in expressions, it's fractional side lengths and decimals and things like that. And I'm like, that's easy to fix. I can take those out for now, just review the concepts. And then I'm constantly reviewing volume then throughout the year, because that's another big hit. Volume is a big piece. So I thought, well, that would be a good idea. I could do that. And then during win time with my kids, I could use that time during Unit 8 to really go through those foundational fraction things. Making it
really doing that front loading piece. Because I do recommend that
Yes.
all the time. Like if you can take, and that's the hard part with fifth grade or with fractions, you don't get a free front loading part.
Yes.
But if you can kind of do your intervention prior to going into the unit, then your kids are more ready for when you actually do the unit.
Yeah. And then I noticed too this year, there were a lot less tears. I did not have kids saying, I'm bad at math. I used to be good at math and now I'm bad at math. I mean, yes, there were some struggles, but not anywhere near close to what we had in the past.
Yeah.
And I felt better about how the kids did overall too.
So, okay, so you did that because I have seen, and I've done this a lot for fourth grade too. Like, so fourth grade teachers, this is very common also. But fourth grade, we've mapped it where you could take their unit 8 geometry, break it up by big idea. And so they would do like big idea 1, and then they would go into like their unit 1. Then they do big idea 2 of geometry, but you did the entire unit all at once.
Minus, I did not do customary units of measurement conversion
Okay.
because I
Okay.
wanted them to understand to multiply powers of 10 with decimals
Which is
first.
the most important standard you have anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't do that and I didn't do line plots right away. I just
Okay.
focused on the vocabulary around like classifying quadrilaterals, things like that, and then volume.
So
And
do you
then
know
I
how much
hit,
time you spent?
it's funny because before, like when I would start with unit 1, I felt like my whole first quarter of
Unit
school
1.
was unit
Sure.
1. I felt like we took forever. And I felt like we didn't have to spend as much time on unit 1 once we got there
Hmm.
because of the front loading that we did during wind time.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So what I did do though, because I was nervous about, I got to make sure I get all of these things in, the big ideas in before testing in April, and we still have 6 weeks of school or 7 weeks of school after state testing. So what I did is I took the year map, like I took a map and
Mm.
I went and looked at the pacing for unit 8, taking out the customary units of measure and line plots. And then I paced everything out just to make sure and had the whole year kind of like re-scoped and sequenced
Yeah.
based on moving that unit 8 first to make
Did you
sure.
did you move anything else?
No, I had to go with like coordinate grids and things like that. I had to use some wind time to kind of make sure I covered that before the state testing.
Okay, because you
And then
weren't
we
going
did
to
the
get all the way
formal
through.
unit. Yeah.
And then the parts of Unit 8 that you didn't get to, you did that after state testing.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, I did that before state testing.
oh, you
I
did.
did that.
So,
I did the customary units of measure actually when we were doing multiplying and dividing, like within unit 4 and 5.
yeah.
When we were learning how to multiply by powers of 10 and divide by powers of 10, then I kind of incorporated some of that customary units of measure because it's so connected to your place value chart.
Right.
And the kids could see it right away.
Yeah.
They saw the connection right away, and it made it so much easier.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So obviously then I have lots of questions. Assessments.
Yes.
So if you did of Unit 8, well, most of Unit 8, but
Yep.
you didn't do all of it, then that means you probably couldn't. Did you give the full Unit 8 test? You just told them what problems not to do?
I reorganized my unit test and took the concepts that I was waiting on out of that unit assessment. And then on my report card were standards based. So then I just didn't have that part filled out on the report card.
Okay.
And then the parents knew that. Like I explained to the parents what we were doing, why we were doing it, and then those scores would be on there once we completed those parts.
So did you include then those assessment items when you did like your Unit 7, your other units, your 4 and 5, like you just kind of
Yeah.
additional parts?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And then
So
if they weren't quite ready, then I could throw it on again in the next unit, and just see where they're
yeah.
at then.
So where did you throw in all your fractional area, perimeter, and volume?
So when we were learning about adding fractions with unlike denominators, then some of my warm-up problems and things, I would put in a perimeter problem as we do a lot of building thinking classrooms.
Yeah.
And so those would be some of my warm-up problems that I would throw in those fractional links. So we're reviewing perimeter, but also reviewing how to add fractions. And then I did the same thing when we were doing multiplying fractions. Then I would throw in some area problems. And then I'd go back and cycle through and do some perimeter ones along with my area ones so that we were kind of spiraling back.
You had to be pretty intentional about that.
Oh, very intentional.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
And I'll tweak it again next year. I felt like I ran out of time with division. I felt like I had kids that were still struggling with division. But my mindset behind that was the kids that were probably going to struggle with division if I spent all that time before state testing were probably still going to struggle during state testing because it's just a hard concept for them. So we just did the best that we could. I wish I would have had maybe an extra week. So I'll go back through and look again and see if I can't figure out a way,
Yeah. So if you did not have wind time and this knowledge of like, I know that I have foundational fractional work to do before I can get to Unit 1. And let's just say you had to go into Unit 1 without that wind time, would you have still moved Unit 8?
think so. And just because, I mean, obviously I would have had to pace it out and see what that would look like.
Because you know, one definitely would have taken you longer because you wouldn't have
Yes.
had foundational work.
Yes. It would have taken me longer if I wouldn't have had the win time. Just because I just saw the difference in the
The
kids.
mindset.
Yes. And you know, the only thing that it kind of messed up a little bit, and this is kind of funny, we have FastBridge is
Yeah.
our, just like our
Your
maps is what
assessment.
we use for FastBridge. It's kind of funny because the only thing that got messed up by me switching that around was my FastBridge data because my
Mm.
winter data went flying really high because my kids knew how to do volume and other kids around the nation didn't. So then in the spring, when it was like they caught back up to where my kids were, it looked like my kids went down, but they
Oh,
really didn't. They went down in percentile, but their scale scores went up.
yeah.
It,
Okay.
it just it's just comparison of
Yeah.
what they knew at that moment in time. But my principal, I talked to him about it, and he's like, if you think that that's what's best for kids, who cares?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. They're
Well, that
showing,
data, the data is supposed to be actionable. So if the data is
yes,
still actionable and predictive, then you're meeting
yes,
the goal, right?
yes.
Instead of just saying like we can show that we're, at a certain percent. Okay, so you would still move it because my thought is I would recommend it to people if they felt like they had, because a lot of people still don't have win time.
I know.
So they don't have time built in to do this intervention work, this front loading. Like I can pull in a little bit of coordinate grade during that time. I can pull in, so they're if they don't have win time, I feel like now you're accepting, even if they did it, they have to accept they will not get through 7,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Or
I think
they,
that's
I
your
know another thing I did is I kind of unit 6 is those story problems, kind of
Mhm.
intentionally weaving some of those in throughout
That's
different
pretty
units
common.
too, so that
Yeah.
it's not a whole unit.
Yeah.
Might work
Because I've
too.
always liked 6 before state testing, not because I love all those story problems, but because felt like it was actually it's the most intentional review because it
Yeah.
was mixed story problems using all 4 operations with
Yep.
fractions, decimals, and whole numbers.
Yeah.
I mean,
No,
that's
I would agree with
why I
that.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's just assume then now you're a novice teacher.
Yeah.
Do it.
If you're a novice teacher, I think it would be really hard
Yeah.
because I feel like I could see you getting wrapped up into the geometry and spending too much time on the geometry because it's fun and not getting to it enough. The answer for a novice teacher, I would just say it's going to be rough going in the beginning and you just have to keep building your kids up. It's hard. Fractions in 5th grade is hard and you
Yeah.
have to take the time to do it conceptually.
Yeah.
You're doing your kids a disservice if you're not taking the time to build the models over and over and over and over again.
It's just going to take longer. And it's so hard to believe that it's good because
Yeah.
you even heard it, right? Like you're like, and then I still ran out of time, or we still were in January and they were still
Yep.
like, I don't know how to add fractions. So it feels like even with doing that, there's still hardships, but
Yep.
I mean, overall, it has paid off. And I think it's also paid off because your entire school has really committed
Yep.
itself to building conceptually. So kids generally are coming in a little higher, I'm assuming.
Yep. And I feel like too, like because of the work the 4th grade teacher is doing and the things that she'll say to me, like, what are some ways I can extend some of my kids that are ready to maybe add some fractions of different
Yes.
denominators,
Yes.
so that she's not teaching necessarily 5th grade material, but she's allowing the kids to explore with that a little bit. So they're
Yeah.
coming in with just more background and they catch on
Sure.
way quicker than when I first started.
Yeah, super interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I agree with you on the novice thing because I think that I mean, I prefer for us to have team decisions, right? Like if Missy does it, then our whole 5th grade team should follow the same pacing because otherwise it's really difficult to have data conversations. It's really difficult to have planning conversations.
Yep.
In this case, you're departmentalized.
Yeah,
So
I myself.
you teach, yeah, you're the only one, right?
Yep.
If you had a team of other pretty mastered teachers, I think that you guys could all follow that same scope.
Oh yeah. Yep.
But if it was where, and I'm saying hypothetically for other people that might watch this, is that if you had a brand new teacher on your team and you were mentoring, that could work because
Yep.
they basically be following what you do and you could be helping them with their pacing or whatnot.
If
But
you plan together
if you
and
plan
really
together,
collaborate. Yep.
and I think it's because it is an art. Teaching is just an art. And you now had so many years under your belt teaching expressions the way it was designed and in the order that it was designed that you knew the ins and outs of it. You knew what worked. You knew the parts that you're like, I could fumble this a little bit, but I know enough that I can bring it in over here. Or I'm
Mhm.
not going to lose track of that because I know how important that is that they can do fractional side lengths and like whatever.
Yep.
That's a masterful art. that
Yeah.
if you have not taught with expressions for, I mean, I would say at least 3 years,
Yeah.
maybe more. I don't know. And you don't have another master mentor teacher who's going to like take you under their wing to do it. I don't know that I would suggest it.
No, I don't think so because I think it's going to take you that long to figure out what pieces of math expressions are the most vital in work. Because when you look at it as a beginning teacher, I mean, I did not want to teach fifth grade. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it took Brad a lot of coaxing to get me out of my comfort zone to go do this because I was like, I was not good at fractions growing up. I don't like fractions. I don't want to teach a whole year of fractions. This sounds horrible. But now I wouldn't, I mean, I wouldn't change it for anything. I love
Yeah.
it.
Well, and you're so much stronger now because you really learned with them. Like
I
you
did.
were vulnerable enough to say, I got to figure out how to teach this. So that means I
Yep,
got to relearn it.
I did. I had to relearn everything.
Yeah. And now, and I always relate it back to like the car mechanic, right? I'm like, okay, so the car mechanic that says, hey, I'm a really good mechanic, you should give me your car, but he only knows really book mechanics, meaning like he knows that there's an engine, he knows that there's like, I'm not at all car savvy, so I shouldn't probably even give this analogy. But regardless, he can only put it together and take it apart in one way because he knows the basics. But if you were to say I'm an expert mechanic, it means I could even bring you my German car that has other parts that I'm not familiar with, but because I understand the making and the workings of it. So now I know really how to take things apart and put them together in different ways and make your car work. I think that's like teaching, right? Like
Yeah.
so some of us that are like that book teacher, like because we were just kind of new to it. We don't know yet, so we have to just do it the way that it was designed, take it apart
Hmm.
together the exact same way. And
Yeah.
it only when we become an expert that we're like, now we can start like moving some things and being a little bit more strategic based on our kids. And it's
Yeah.
not a bad thing that if people aren't there yet.
Oh, no, not at
There's no
all.
grace. You're just not there yet.
Yep.
I just don't want people throwing it out there and be like, well, she said we could just rotate all these units. I'm like, there's a caveat there.
Yeah.
Because what you did was
Yeah.
masterful.
Yeah. I mean, and I didn't, last year was the first year that I even thought about it. And I was fully ready to go back to the way I had been doing it if I
Yeah.
didn't think it made a difference.
No,
You
I'm
know,
super curious to see what your results, because you don't have your state results back, I'm assuming.
not officially yet, no, but Brad's got some unofficial things that came through that
Okay.
they're not public yet, but he just said, all he said to me was, you'll be very happy.
Okay.
Because
Well,
I
I
was
gotta go with
nervous.
that.
I was nervous and I was
Yeah,
like,
I mean it's a leap, it's a risk, right? Let's see how
yeah.
it goes.
Our fast bridge scores were really good in the
Okay.
spring. That those, I mean, those continued to grow. So that just makes me think
Yeah.
that they're
Yeah.
pretty,
Well, share them with us when you get them, or at least with
I
me.
will. Well, and
I
my
love
kids feel good about math. Like I
that's the
had a
thing.
kid who came into math and she said, last year I cried every night. And this year I can do it.
That's so good.
And it's just because I think, I don't know, kids when they're ready, they'll figure it
Well, and
out.
I think there's definitely something to be said about having instant success.
Yeah.
Because, that's I mean, that's why we have built like the first 10 days and stuff, which would
Hmm.
kind of, I think, throw a wrench in some of your plan there. But for people that follow that first 10 days, because it starts with fractions, I
Yep.
think that part of the mentality of that is that I need them to have a different mindset going into math and be successful with some other even non-mathy things to
Yep.
feel like this is not the same story you've been told in math class for how many years.
Yep.
This could be a new story for you.
Yep. And I do all the days up until I think that first fraction lesson that you have in your
Okay.
first
And then,
10.
yeah,
So
which
I do
makes
like the first 6 days or 7 days, I think,
yeah.
with the growth mindset and all
Yeah.
those productive struggle and
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
mathematicians was a mathematician. Like I do all of that stuff.
Awesome. That's so great. And
Yeah.
by the way, we're rewriting all that, so you'll get a new revised one this year.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, similar but better.
Yeah.
Okay, so as we wrap up, any other advice you'd give about pacing, about teaching, about math, anything else?
I guess, I mean, it's kind of weird to say because you have to get through a certain amount of curriculum and there's always that pressure of getting through it. But at the same time, if you gloss over everything super quickly, they're still not going to know it. So it's just so important to, have a pulse on your kids. And like if the pacing guide in the curriculum says 1 day, but your kids aren't ready to move on, take 2 days
Yeah.
because something else that's supposed to take 2 days might not. And we
Mhm.
always say, I got to go slow to go fast, like, especially with fifth grade math, because they have to understand unit one. And I
Yeah.
tell that to my kids all the time. And they'll say to me, Miss Burley, do you remember when you told us that we really have to understand unit one to understand this? Look at this is connected to unit one because we have to do this. And so that they see the connection.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So where would you draw the line though? At what point are you like, you got to move on?
See,
It's a
again, I
slippery
have
slope.
win time. I have win time, and if you don't have win time at your school, I would strongly encourage talking to your administrator to see if that is something that you could put in because
You guys have it 5 days a week
we have it every day and we have three 30-minute win times.
and you
So,
have it for ELA and for math.
yeah, so we have a math 30-minute win time. So I teach the 30-minute math win time. So I see all the kids every day.
Wow.
Our reading teacher does a writing win time, and then our science social studies teacher does like a reading win time and does like junior grade books and things like that.
Yeah.
And then they just rotate through all three people.
So you figured it out with your master schedule because that's the
Yeah.
biggest issue is that people are like, we don't have time for win with all the
Yeah.
other, requirements they have. But there's people that are not only making it work. Cause I was like, at least glass half full, like at least give me 2 days a week of win
Yeah.
for 30 minutes of math. Cause a lot of people have win time, but it's devoted completely to ELA.
Yeah.
I'm
That's
like,
too bad because our kids, kids need math too.
I mean, the issue is for me is that if they're below grade level at all, even a tier, one kid that needs a double dose, that double dose has to happen outside of core. There is not an additional core time to do a double
No,
dose.
no.
And so if you have anyone that's below grade level, you physically do not have the time in the core classroom to cover those needs. And I
Yeah.
think that's where teachers are so stressed. I mean, you're
Yeah.
going to be stressed with the pacing no matter what. I mean, as you just said, but think about how much more stressed out you're going to be if now you're trying to cover on grade level skills and intervention skills
Yeah.
all in the same 60 minutes.
And the kids that were gone for a week and the kids that were, it's
All of it.
like,
It's crazy.
yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, well, I think it's good advice. I think one, really push to see if they can get win time in, and then two, that conceptual comes first. But
Yeah.
there is a line, right? So
There is. Yep.
you can't spend, as much of time as you want. But
Yep.
I mean, because I always say like you're aiming for 80% of your class. If 80% of your class is getting it, you got to keep going, and you touch
Yep.
20% and win. Is that generally your philosophy?
Oh, 100%. And I always to look at, like I tell the kids, there were kids that were standards based. So there would be kids that were at a 1 or a 2 for adding and subtracting fractions. But when we are doing adding and subtracting decimals, I incorporate that and show them the connection of adding and subtracting decimals, how it's similar to adding and subtracting fractions. And that's why a 10th can't be added with a 100th because they're different size pieces, just like in Unit 1. And we're constantly referring back to Unit 1.
So good. So
Yeah.
strong. Yeah, because I think kids think they're totally isolated. I'm like,
Yeah.
and that's why they can't keep all those rules in their head.
Yes.
Yeah, totally. Well, I know that our time is up, Missy, but I sure am grateful that you just took time to talk about this because it is a very hot topic. I don't see any comments on either one, but if people have comments, I hope that they will ask. And
Yes, please.
I know Missy's really great about, opening up her email inbox and answering other questions or sending you sample schedules for at least for master schedules. I mean, their schools figured it out and they're getting really good results. So if you're going to mimic any school, it would be Missy's school. And then if you need any support from me, let me know. But Missy also has an affiliate link for Match Genius Squad. So if you want anything with Match Genius Squad or you're thinking about it, let her know and she'll give you a separate link to use to go make your purchase. So awesome. Thanks, Missy. It's always great to talk to you.
Yep, always great to talk to you too, Shannon.
All right.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon. Enjoy summer.